April 2018, a journey began for 5 San Francisco Bay Area artists: Reiko Fuji, Ellen Bepp, Kathy Fujioka, Judy Shintani, and Sherry Arai DeBoer shared a common history. Their relatives were unjustly imprisoned in American concentration camps during World War II. These included Topaz Camp in Utah, Heart Mountain Camp in Wyoming, Gila River Camp in Arizona, Amache Camp in Colorado, Crystal City Family Camp in Texas, Lordsburg Camp in New Mexico, and Tule Lake and Manzanar camps in California. This particular journey to the Manzanar camp transported the artists deeper into their families' roots, to imagine a time when their relatives were sent to desolate areas of the country. The artists sought to dig deeper beneath the layers, to reveal more about this unjust history that connected them, as they discovered unexpected insights and unique shared experiences. These Sansei, or third-generation Japanese artists, came together as daughters and granddaughters, open, seeking, with a desire to honor their ancestors who had endured the World War II incarceration. They drove more than 8 hours from the Bay Area to the Manzanar incarceration camp, located at the foot of the Sierra Nevada, in California's Owens Valley, between the towns of Lone Pine to the south and Independence to the north. This weekend marked the anniversary of the 49th annual Manzanar Pilgrimage. With attendees converging from many points near and far. The artist's intention was to connect, share, and learn from the many pilgrimage participants. They listened to an impressive and diverse range of speakers.
When we were growing up, all of our friends were going to Disneyland and we were coming to the desert, and I kept wondering, why are we coming to the desert when everybody else is going to Disneyland? It was because his years during internment were so impactful on his life.
They joined in both solemn ceremonies and uplifting festivities. They toured the grounds of the camp, where they personally and collectively connected to this shameful period of U.S. history. To honor their family members who were incarcerated, the artists had gathered before the trip to write those individual names on small strips of handmade Japanese paper, or washi. The strips were then tied like noshi, or ceremonial knots, onto small pine branches. Representing longevity, good fortune, and steadfastness, the pine branch was used as a special purification wand. One by one, each artist recited her family's names in ceremonial remembrance at the Manzanar site. Each pine branch offering was passed along from artist to artist, culminating in a sort of bouquet of branches, creating a unified symbol honoring all their relations and ancestors. Thanks to the helpful research and willingness of a very special Manzanar Park Ranger, the artist group was able to locate the exact site of Reiko Fuji's family's barracks.
And a dress like you want to do. That's one of the ways to tell. And then the laundry room is a much larger slab and the ironing room much shorter. Building 4 is going to be right off from the men's latrine.
The power of this hallowed space was palpable, and thus was chosen as the location to carry out the main honoring ceremony. The first on-site installation consisted of paper lanterns that each artist had prepared ahead of the trip by applying photos of loved ones and other symbolic motifs and designs to the surfaces of their personal lanterns. We ask for permission to open our sacred space on this original land of the Paiute and Shoshone nations. We will call in the energy of the 4 directions and the sky, the earth, and the center. We ask our ancestors to guide and protect us.
I give thanks to the South, new beginnings and purity, honor and respect. My life as an artist is intimately tied to my Japanese roots, the war's incarceration of my family, and the fractured lives that have since led to generations of healing. My personal journey has been one of inner evolution and transformation. I strive to express the spiritual soul in my art through my paintings and poetry. Flowers began appearing in my work as I connected more deeply to my family and those imprisoned during World War II. The cherry blossom flower plays a significant role in many of my art pieces. Before incarceration, my family owned and operated a thriving wholesale plant nursery in Berkeley. My art, in some ways, is a spiritual revitalization from the gardens of my ancestors. Pretty pink petals, cherry blossoms fill the sky, gazing in delight. Love is in the air, hopes and dreams with heart's desire. A soft breeze, deep breath, temporal beauty, purity, fragility, life, death, transcendence.
I honor the West. During the war, my parents were forced to leave California and move east, but they always looked back to the West, and when the war ended, they returned when they could. The West is a symbol of growth and opportunity. I look to it as a symbol of expansiveness of my soul. I first started doing my artwork through observation of some of my favorite buildings and plant life. By trying to record the structure and details in my drawings, I learned to see more, to slow down and observe more carefully. I eventually learned to transfer that skill to other subjects. In my artwork, I create small views of a quiet world. Even if addressing difficult issues, I find myself taking a more reflective view. After 20 years of printmaking, I'm just coming to embrace my tendency to work at a small scale and taking the close-up, intimate view. I often start my artwork with a small notion, an appreciation of a hand tool, or a valued memento that represent someone's identity. As I develop the work, it sometimes takes on a life of its own and evolves to address larger issues, such as immigration or the transience of life. My etching, entitled Transient Rooms, started with a photograph from the late 1920s of my mother and aunt outside of a hotel boarding house run by my aunt's family in Sacramento. I added images of other family mementos, a receipt from my grandfather's nursery before World War II, my great-uncle's pocket watch, and a watercolor he painted while incarcerated at Tule Lake during the war. As I added these images, the work came to tell the story of my family's multiple displacements and adaptation. One of the most rewarding benefits of doing my artwork is the conversations I've been able to have with others that I never would have had otherwise. My hope is that my work spurs others to engage and connect more deeply with family, with friends, and unexpected others.
I call in the north, guided by the polar star. It is a symbol of stability and everlasting goal. It is a symbol of illumination and discovery. It is the land where my father's family lived in the cold, clear waters of the Pacific Northwest, where they raised oysters, a symbol of purity.
I was born in Ames, Iowa, to a mother from Honolulu, Hawaii, and a father from Paulsbo, Washington. My father's family lost their oyster farming business when they were taken to Tule Lake incarceration camp in the 1940s. My mother saw the bombers flying overhead on their way to attack Pearl Harbor. They met across the country in New York. My father tried to get employment in television for years. They finally ended up back on the West Coast. I grew up a minority in the Central Valley town of Lodi, California, before moving to the Bay Area for college. In my 40s, I earned my master's in Arts and Consciousness, Transformative Art from JFK University. That's where my journey into researching my family history and how it touches my life and the Japanese American collective trauma. I see my art as a way to heal myself, my ancestors, and future generations. It is more important than ever to bring our concentration camp history to light and connect it to the injustices in our own country. My dream refuge installation started with one drawing and one cot, a drawing of a young girl sleeping on a mattress. I wanted to bring visibility to the children who were imprisoned in deplorable conditions during the Japanese American incarceration. I wanted to remind people that children were imprisoned in dirty, smelly horse stables for months before moving to their real prisons in desolate, harsh, severe desert areas. The pieces moved people to tears, bringing up their own memories and images of their own innocent children living in these harsh, unjust situations. I stuffed the mattress with hay. The smell and itchy dryness transported me to that time, to be that 8-year-old girl. Since I created the first sleeping child, the number of Central American immigrants at our southern border has exploded. Their situation parallels the Japanese American incarceration in so many ways. I decided to expand the installation to 20 sleeping children to connect our history to the plight of the asylum-seeking children refugees. Lest we forget, we must fight against this continuing trauma and repeating this atrocity in America.
The moon rises, the sun rises. Our ancestors came from the east. The sky links two worlds. I was born in 1950 in Riverside, California. My birth came 4 years after 16 members of my family, including my parents and grandparents, were released from their imprisonment in Manzanar and other World War II American concentration camps. My life and art have forever been intertwined with the influence of the camps on my family. A determination to preserve stories, the stories of my ancestors and the stories of the Japanese American experience. Ultimately, their experiences become part of my own story as expressed in kiln-formed glass, performance art, installations, photography, documentaries, and book arts. My installations have included patched and tattered clothing worn by my family members in the camps. I have letters, mementos, and video recollections I gathered from my relatives and others. My detained alien enemy glass kimono gave rise to a personally emotional wearable art piece. Individual photographs of my family, friends, and acquaintances while they were incarcerated are fused onto 224 glass frames. This kimono comes alive when worn as the glass strikes together, creating the sound of wind chimes. I won't forget the past. I will continue to pay homage to my Japanese American culture and my ancestors. I hope to inspire future generations to embrace this same reverence and to learn from the history, the ramifications suffered by injustices that are still being practiced today.
I was born in 1949 and raised in the Japantown community of San Jose, California. My family was still adjusting to life after being imprisoned in World War II American concentration camps. But I was fortunate, learning about Japanese art and culture at an early age. My grandmother taught Japanese flower arranging and kimono making, and my grandfather was a photographer, calligrapher, and painter. They planted an artistic seed in me that has been growing my whole life. The 1960s civil rights era spurred me to question the status quo, and I became involved in the Asian American political movement. I began expressing my Asian American identity through the art of taiko and also creating Asian-inspired wearable textile art. My mixed media work became a vehicle to address issues of social injustice, such as the legacy of the American concentration camps, the Hiroshima-Nagasaki bombings, and the genocide of indigenous peoples. One day, I discovered a copy of my grandfather's personal will that he had written while incarcerated at Heart Mountain Camp. Reading his words was chilling, and I wanted to create a hand-cut paper piece to express the gravity of this experience. I started with one single sheet of black paper and a razor blade to cut out each letter of his text. With each cut, I felt a cathartic release of my anger and grief. I could picture my older sister, only 3 years old when they were sent to camp, spending her toddler years in the desert, locked behind barbed wire. My will. September 2nd, 1945. To Sumi, Yoneo, Yoshi, Shiro and Mio, and immediate relatives and kin. When I suddenly die, please keep in mind that I wish that my funeral should not be performed in such a way as we always witness among our people. It is unnecessary, or rather foolish and sinful, to waste money and energy for such obsolete, traditional, and irrational performances. It should be extremely simple as the last rite for my passing. We human beings are passing through the period of the greatest tragedy in human history. It seems to me that it was inevitable effect of primitive spiritual weakness of human races in evolution onto higher plane. All in karma. Kiroku Bep. Kiroku Bep, Sumi Bep, Haruyo Higuchi, Hikoshichi Higuchi, Yoshi Bep, Yoneo Bep, Celia Mio Bep.
Masaji Fuji, Midori Fuji, Haru Kuromiya, Sets Ata, Aki Inaba, Mitz Inaba, Lola Shazara, Anthony Inaba.
Mariko Suzuki, Kaiichi Suzuki, Masamichi Suzuki, George and June Suzuki, Shigeki Arai, Ben Arai, Alice Arai, Unosuke and Sae Sasaki.
Grandpa Fred Kiechi Fuji, Maro Sasuke, Jiro Kaoru, Noriko, and Ray.
Sumi Shintani, Mitz Shintani, Mitch Shintani, Yoshi Iwamura, Ken Iwamura, Karen Iwamura, Shoimon Shintani, Hatsuo Shintani, John Matsuoka.